So, all right, there we go. Well, we usually start with welcoming new folks. So, anybody that would like to introduce themselves that hasn't been here before?
Yeah, that's probably me. Hey, folks, Jason Weiss with a small startup called Digital Triad Group. We do training on secure software development, and saw this advertised today from Cole's post on LinkedIn and decided to jump on and listen in.
Thanks, Jason. Great to have you here.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm working at Control Plane. I'm an ITSC member with Cole, and I also package Witness for Nix or NixOS. But yeah, hi.
Awesome. Anyone else that's new that would like to introduce themselves?
I'll say hi real quick. I just had a moment to join. I saw this post on LinkedIn, so I wanted to jump in and want to learn a little bit more. I'm interested in the space, but I just know some of the individuals here at the company from a past job, and I'm working as a freelance DevOps migration consultant.
Hey, Robbie. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks for joining. All right, not put myself on mute when talking. I'll share the notes. I don't know if Google Meet shows the chat history or not, but messages are sending very slowly. So there's a notes document. For our agenda today, I think the first thing is kind of an update on the Witness and Archivista proposed donation. So if folks have or haven't heard, I'll find a link quick here for the GitHub issue. We submitted an issue to the Intoto project to donate Witness and Archivista to become a part of that. One of the the main intents behind this is because we would like Witness and Archivista to be open to the community, to be governed by the type of governance that a foundation like the CNCF can offer. This is a demonstration of our commitment to not take all of these projects and relicense them at some point in time in the future with another license. Not that anyone else would ever do something like that. And so some of the things that we're looking for is feedback from the ITSC, which is the Intoto Steering Committee, kind of about that. We presented at the Intoto community call last Friday, I think it was, and there was a lot of positive reception there. The GitHub issue has a few thumbs ups and other positive emojis. I haven't seen any thumbs down or discouraging remarks yet, but we're really looking for feedback from folks to help encourage this to happen. So if people want to add a comment on the GitHub issue or do anything else, or if you have any questions or concerns, we would definitely love to try and address those. We know that there are some things to resolve between the implementation and some of the specifications and the future directions, but those are things that we can take care of. So, Ian?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about the time frame and then the structure here. So I think there's probably, with Intoto graduating, there's probably a little bit of a hold. So did you put this issue out there to kind of like prep the conversation for post-graduation? When that happens, would this be a sub-project within Intoto or is it directly to the CNCF? What was your thoughts there?
So this would be a sub-project under Intoto. The project status is in flux right now with the CNCF and the Technical Oversight Committee. They are, we're not sure what's going to happen or when the the due diligence would be reviewed for moving to graduation. It's really, that will definitely, I think, highly unlikely it would happen before KubeCon. We tried, and by we, I mostly, I mean Santiago, Cole, the ITSC, tried to get that before KubeCon so we could have a big announcement there, but it was submitted at the end of August, and I don't think there's been a single comment from a TOC member. There may be a conversation happening somewhere else that I don't know about, but I don't know, Cole or Jack, if either of you know if there's any updates or progress. You're on mute, Cole.
Now, from just looking at the traffic on the TOC, it looks like there's a queue going, right? And probably just somewhere in that queue in order to be considered for graduation, right? TOC's got a lot of work. The biggest thing is we don't want to have that being a dependency anymore on donating, especially what has happened with some of the other communities, right? We want to show that, hey, we really want this project to be under community governance. We believe that creating attestations, should it be something that is a closed source proprietary thing, right? And we want to take our technology and make sure that others can contribute it without fear of that license getting pulled underneath them. So that's our main reason why we want to donate it to this CNCF. And because we implement the Intoto specification, we believe that the Intoto group is a perfect place for it. So that's really our motivations behind it. And we wanted to wait for graduation. We thought it'd be a better order, but just, the market's changed. The way that people look at open source has changed since what happened with other companies in the space.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've seen in a couple other projects is a willingness to accept sub-projects, even undergraduated projects that are at a different stage of development. And so there's been a few, and I think that's the thing we want to convey is like, hey, this is, even though Intoto may be at a graduated stage, this project is not production ready, it's not 1.0, it's not whatever sort of disclaimer we want to give until the community has confidence in that. I know that the folks at TestifySec do, but if it comes down to like wanting to wait for more alignment with the upstream specification or the ITE 10 or 11 work on policies, how we have a few things that are slightly different there. As far as the project itself, I think those of us that have worked on it for a while have a lot of confidence in it. So, oh, cool. So, yeah, and I'll I started a thread in the Intoto ITSC public Slack channel, asking if the ITSC has any feedback for us, because we haven't received much so far. The one main piece is a request to have maintainers from at least two different organizations, preferably more than two. And so we've got plenty of maintainers from TestifySec. So if folks from other areas are interested in being a maintainer, we will have people working on it full time. And so it would be, there will be people to help grow maintainers if you're new to it, or if you're just dipping your toe in the water. There will be a lot of support from the folks at TestifySec. So all right, cool. And then other than that, I'm trying to take notes and talk at the same time. The work, the things that we've been up to recently, there is a external data provider for, let me get a link to the repo here. And so what the external data provider does is works with OPA and the open policy agents. And so you can create policies in there to, approve or disapprove of different things you can look for. And they also they have admission webhooks or admission controllers and mutating webhooks. And so you could do something like anytime you try to deploy a container image that comes from Docker Hub, actually switch out Docker Hub with, our private registry or something like that. Or you could add a label onto a container as it's deployed. One of the things that you can do with the external data provider is check some external resource to see if that external resource says this container image should be deployed. And so in this case, we will look at that container image and then check against the witness policy that's provided and the public key, and then look for the set of attestations that exist in Archivista and see if that is in compliance with the policy from witness. So that's really cool. It kind of gives us one of those like last mile type integrations of you can do a lot of integrations, and we'll see one today. Sorry, my cat is running through here. With CI/CD pipelines and things like that, but also, it's important once you get past those pipelines, there's a lot of times separate mechanisms for actually deploying to production. And so to have something there is also pretty interesting. So it's very early right now for that. There's a few things to work out, but it's there and functional. So that's pretty cool. And then one of the other things that Mikhail has been working on, and I think Chris, you might have been working on this a little bit too, is some of the verification summary attestations. And so this is combination of in the Salsa community, and I think it's actually going to move back to the Entoto attestations group, which is this ability to kind of check a policy and then create an attestation that summarizes the set of attestations that were there before. So if you have a whole bunch of attestations, maybe with a bunch of proprietary information or something you don't want to share, or you just need a policy to be verified and you want a statement that is attested to that policy was checked, you could create a BSA. And so one of the things that we're doing with this that we thought was really interesting is the idea of actually using witness run to do a witness verify. And so it's a little bit of inception going on there, but by verifying the policy through a witness run, you can generate all of the other attestations that you would normally get about the environment where the policy is being verified. So you can get the environment information if you're doing it in a Git repo. If you're doing it in a GitHub action or somewhere else, you can get that extra metadata and associate that with the verification summary attestation. So definitely curious if folks have any feedback on that, and we'll keep everybody updated kind of as we progress on that work. Cool.
Yeah. Does anyone know of any use of that VSA outside of some of the prototypes that we've been working on? Or just like the first use of it? I know that the spec's been created and been around for quite some time, about a year or so. I take that as a no. All right, that's interesting. Might be a good blog article for the OpenSSF blog too, once we get something there.
Yeah. And so the predicates are another area of things that we're like just starting to think about. And so I started a Slack thread yesterday, and I think that Marcella and Santiago and Trishank other people from the Intoto community commented on the idea of an open source program office approval attestation. And so a lot of large organizations have some sort of centralized governance around whether or not the engineers can use certain open source. And so being able to have a record of that approval that's attested to is something that could be really useful. So just starting that, we'll probably draft up, start a GitHub issue and submit a kind of a draft proposal for the predicate. But then once again, like kind of once we have that going, we can prototype stuff in Witness without having to wait for all that to be formalized, especially with the attester model that we have. So we can kind of have almost a different maturity level of different attesters. And on the predicate front, if there is any other type of predicates that people are interested in seeing, we're definitely super interested to hear what use cases you have, or if there's anything else that's useful. Sean.
Yeah, so I guess along those same lines, and as far as our organization goes, I mean, I think this is something that we're interested in. I think you alluded to it earlier, as far as as we have internal review policies and whatnot for different things. So we are interested in that aspect, and we'll be looking to see what type of attestations or predicates, and more likely that we can either create or help guide the community in that regard. So I think from our standpoint, we want to at least say, hey, this is almost like we're putting a stamp, like, hey, we've reviewed this software, and then another, what I would call like a stamp or attestation to say, like, this is now like approved for use by our organization. So that's something we are interested in. I think Mikhail had kind of posted, like, perhaps the VSA would be an avenue that we could leverage right now, but that if there's some more discussion, that may not be the right route. So I think we are kind of looking at establishing some sort of predicate for what I would say, like, we've received, and it's from our internal tool, if you will, of our library of all the FOSS that we are maintaining, as well as we are also approving that use of particular FOSS, and then maybe perhaps in the use cases of how can you use that FOSS.
Yeah, I think this is super interesting. Ian?
Yeah, I think it's just an offer of help. So I think as you begin to formulate that issue, and if you want any community support in that, we're more than happy to jump in and be supportive of it, but then also help with any definition too.
Awesome, thanks. One of the things that did come up in a related context, but slightly different, on the policy front, is the idea of parameters to policies. And so, interesting use case here with the OSPO approval idea is, my experience was a pharma company I worked at, they would approve a project, and the approval of that project was usually independent of the release or the version of that. And so you could approve contributing to the Intoto project, you could use the Intoto project in your source code, and it was kind of, didn't really matter what version you used because it was the project that was approved. When you go to have a policy that verifies that, though, it may be useful to know a specific version. Let's say there's an open source project that you used previous releases of, and a future release they change your license. Your program office may have a different opinion now about whether or not you should continue to use that open source. And so it's this fine balance between, you could create an attestation for every single version, or should you create an attestation that somehow later on you can revoke, or kind of have write your policy in a way such that you can exclude a certain version or things like that. The context that this came up in was when using Fulcio to sign attestations, because one of the things that you can do, you can verify they have extensions to X509, is the Git URL of the workflow for like a GitHub action. And so you could point to, usually if you're going to do a release, you would be pointing to a tagged version of the GitHub action. And so if you verify to that specific version, then you need a new policy for every version that you're going to release. And so there was interest in being able to have some sort of parameter, so you didn't have to change the policy, but you could verify different versions of pipeline or release. So that, like, this is something that's interesting, but I think could have some rough edges, and so we're definitely interested from feedback from folks about this idea, and I think Aditya has been involved in those conversations too. So curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, and I want to note that in Toto does support it in layouts, but it's typically an implementation detail rather than that's something that's really in the Toto spec itself. Also implemented it in the I-10 and I-11 prototype, and you're right, it's super handy to be able to write like a generic layout that you don't have to keep regenerating and re-signing for each release or different packages and things like that. But I also do wonder that it might be worth exploring as a small IT or something like that, as this is also perhaps built into witness policies. Because I think there is a little bit more for us to reason about where these parameter values are coming in. And, like we trust the layout, but like we've got to trust the parameters that we're passing into the layout as well. And it's perhaps worth writing this up a little bit more formally and reasoning through all of that as well. And this could be a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think, and maybe there is a recommendation to, if you do that policy verification, to generate a VSA that captures those input parameters or something like that. That way you have that historical record. Yeah, but definitely anytime you're taking end user parameters into something that needs to be secure, there's a whole set of implications there. So definitely want to think through that. Yeah, and one of the things that we're looking at coming up, I think we mentioned this before, is integrating Tough with Archivista to store policies. And so this way there could be a root of trust in Archivista itself. Today we don't store policies in Archiv. Well, you can store a signed policy in Archivista because it's in Toto attestation, but you have to have a separate public key in order to verify that. So if instead of distributing that public key, you could have a root of trust in Archivista, you could have a high degree of confidence in the public key and the policy itself when you go to verify. So this is a super interesting thing. And as we kick that off, we'll definitely have a GitHub issue, and we'll be super interested for folks to take a look and collaborate and contribute to that. So, and then, yes, the last thing, we always have to, Friday is always for demos, right? So rather than just talking, I can show a cool demo that hopefully will work. Live demo, we'll see what happens. Let me share. Does anybody have any other questions or topics they want to chat about? All right, cool. And feel free to interrupt, ask any questions, and we'll see how this goes. So as this is spinning a little bit to share, can folks see my browser? All right, got a thumbs up. All right, so this is a demo we're working on, and we named it Software Factory because this is what a lot of people how they're thinking about their supply chains. And so there's a process that one of our customers has to go through, and they have all of the different stages. And in the different stages, they have a whole different set of tools to use. And so here we put all of this into a GitLab pipeline with some different stages for building, scanning, releasing. And the verify stage here could possibly be integrated into the pipeline as a feedback loop for developers. But like we said before, you're probably going to want some external verification of this as well too, because with the developers controlling this pipeline, they can control the policy that gets input to this or other things. But if there's going to be the policy check externally to this before deployment or something else, it would be in their best interest if they actually want to deploy their new code to production to not do that. So in this case, we can see here in the build step, a bunch of different scans that are running. And so if I can make this or find this, mostly just setup stuff here. So we have a linting step. And in this case, we're using HaloLint to scan Docker files. And then we do Go format. And then we do Go vets. And we used a SAS scanner here with semgrep. So we kind of go through a lot of these different things. Very similar to the GitHub action, we're wrapping all the commands here with witness run. In this specific example, we're just wrapping it in there's a make file that calls these different things, but we're collaborating with GitLab right now to bake this into the GitLab runner, so you don't actually have to modify your pipeline at all. So this is kind of a preview of the art of the possible future. And so you go through all of these different steps, and if they each pass, then you go through a release step, and then you verify the policy. So one of the things we kind of want to show is, let's say we need to modify our Docker file for some reason. So in this case, we needed to install some stuff as root or do something else to our Docker file. You saw that we were doing linting on the Docker file. One of the things that HaloLint checks for is whether or not your Docker file has a user as root. And so I needed to, say as a developer, to just get this fix in really fast. I forgot to take this user root out for a root install of some packages or some other configuration in the container I had to do. And I'm going to just go ahead and commit that. And the other person I'm working with is, they know that we need to get this change out, and we're gonna just go ahead and ship it because our customer is mad and they're waiting for this fix. So we'll fix this, and we'll obviously, we want to be good. We want to sign our commits, and we'll push this up. So now we'll go ahead and take a look. Hopefully, as this pipeline kicks off, and obviously we would actually submit this as a PR. It would be reviewed and approved. But for the sake of the demo, it's a little bit easier to show this way. So as this is going through here, we can see our build step. We got to load all of our executors and so forth. And hopefully this shouldn't take too long. We'll see what happens. All right. So our job failed. And if we look at the output of this, we'll see the reason it failed was because we had that root in there. And so we don't really want that failure. Like, we need to just get through this. And one of the things that we can do, because we know what our makefile is doing, how we're building this, we're going to go ahead and, rather than fixing that, because we need to have root in there, we can come to our makefile and we can just change this this HaloLint command, and we can just put this ignore in there. So we're just going to ignore the checks for root in our Docker files. So let's go ahead and add our makefile. and we'll commit that. And we'll push that up. So let's see if we're going to get through our pipeline this time. And look at that. We're already running again. Hopefully these things don't take forever too long. But as this is running, we can take a look at our policy here. And so in our policy, we have all these different steps for the pipeline. And so we can see there's a format step, there's a vetting step, there's a linting step, SAS test, our Docker build, generating, like all of these different things that you can see from the pipeline. And one of the things that the linting step is going to do is, we have all our different environments, attesters, or all the different types of attesters, our environment, our Git, our material, the command run, and our product attester. And then you can see for the command run, we have this Rego policy here. And so what this Rego policy actually records is what the expected command should be. And so the thing about this expected command is it doesn't have that -- ignore in there. And so in theory, when we see this get to the verification step, we should be able to see that the pipeline was modified in a way that it's not in compliance with that policy anymore. And so while we wait for this, if we go back to this pipeline that passed, we can see in the verification that we basically did our witness verify here. And one of the things that we wanted to show with this example as well too is all of these are the attestations that are stored throughout this process. You could also upload all of these attestations to Archivista and then pull them down from there. But in this case, like if you wanted to download this entire release with all of the attestations, move it to somewhere else and verify it where you don't have access to an Archivista instance, you can still do that verification here with all of these attestations locally. And so, we were able to find all of the right evidence. And let's see here if the other one is going to make it through. Well, fingers crossed. We're releasing now. We'll verify. The release should be pretty simple. And basically, this is just creating that tarball of all of the attestations, the Docker image we built, and the evidence as well. And so one of the things with all of the evidence here that we're storing is we can check the hashes of all of this evidence. None of this evidence is signed or anything else, but the product attester of each of these different steps recorded the hash of that evidence. And so if someone were to try and modify the evidence or do something else, you would know that it's not going to match up. And this job succeeded. So moment of truth. Jason, you have a question?
Yeah, so I assume that policy file that you showed, that would be stored in like the GitLab security policy project outside of the reach of the developer. Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah, and you could have a copy of the policy here, but like once again, like you want to have a policy somewhere that's immutable, or at least you can't. You need the private key to sign the policy as well, and so those things. We could do a demo. I think it'll be a cooler demo once we have the Archivista support for policies, because then we could just pull the policy from there with that root of trust. But yeah, this is kind of like for demo purposes. You would go somewhere else to get that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then, hey, Cole.
Yeah, I was going to say too, like that policy can be enforced anywhere, right? So you can distribute that policy to the admission controller. Admission control, I think John's got a prototype that he built, right? So even though like this check, right, the developer could change that policy out if they wanted to, right? They couldn't change it where the execution environment is. And that's really one of the big powerful things about Zentoto is that it allows you to move that policy enforcement point around.
Yeah, definitely. And with your organization knowing that, I think it gives the developers a lot of incentive to not try and do things like that. So in this case here, we can see we failed to verify the policy because there were not a set of valid attestations to satisfy that policy. So then we could go back and change everything to the way it was before, and we should be able to make it through just like we did the first time. So that's the demo. Anybody have any other questions or want to see anything else in here before? Yeah, Jack.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're working with GitLab to integrate this. Would it, by that, do you mean it'll be added to Auto DevOps, or is it going to be like integrated into the runner? So like people won't even have to think about it.
Yeah, into the runner itself. And so since almost everything at GitLab is open source, it's a good open source collaboration with them. Yeah, Cole. You're on mute if you're talking.
Oh, the really nice thing about that Go Witness library is that it makes it easy to integrate in a lot of this stuff, right? So I think we've done we have that GitHub action, right? And then we also have a proof of concept. You look on our repo, you'll find the code there. We don't really advertise it. A Tecton pipeline integration as well that replaces a Tecton executor with one that we provide.
Okay, cool. Is there a public PR for like the integration into GitLab, or is it still hidden? I know sometimes it goes through like their enterprise tier first for like a couple months.
Yeah, we're still working with GitLab. We have a proof of concept where we validated it, but there's still work that needs to be done to have it released. If you're interested in it, hit us up offline and we can kind of walk you through what we built there. But yeah, it needs to be upgraded to like the new version of Witness. We need to build out, and there's just a lot of technical debt there on that GitLab runner that we need to clean up. All in due time though. And if you want to help contribute to it, we can help you walk through the code base too, and kind of show you how we're doing that on that proof of concept.
Yeah, sounds interesting. I won't go too much into detail, but yeah, I'm thinking of integrating Witness into something that's also a bit like a long-running build daemon thing like this. So this would be kind of perfect as reference.
Cool. Yeah, let us know how we can help.
All right. Well, that was all I had for today for the conversation. Anybody have any other topics or anything else they want to chat about? And I have to double check. I think the next community meeting right now is scheduled for November 17th, which is the week before Thanksgiving. So hopefully we're all right there. It'll be a couple of weeks after KubeCon, enough time for folks to recover if you're attending there. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a cool end-to-end demo showing all of this with the admission controller as well too, so we can kind of see that whole end-to-end workflow. And if there's any other demos other people want to give or anything that you are you want to see, just let us know, and feel free to drop something in the agenda for the community call, or ping us, and we'd be happy to do that. And then the other thing is hopefully we'll have an update on donating Witness and Archivista to the Entoto project. So awesome. Well, happy Friday to everybody. I think I can call it a day now. I had a demo that worked live in front of a bunch of people, so I'm happy with that. And yeah, so everybody have a great weekend and chat soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.